Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to Fourth and Frames, where tonight we are going to continue our early redraft rankings with our running back twos and our draft rankings covering running backs 13 to 24. Ladies and gentlemen, let's get it popping.
This should be played at high volume, preferably in a residential area.
And thank you all for joining us tonight here on Fourth and Frames. Welcome to the show, and do not forget to like, subscribe, and review to catch any time a new podcast or short drops from us here at Fantasy and Frames. And you can search for all the podcasts here at Fantasy and Frames by name wherever you listen to podcasts. And for us, make sure to subscribe to the Fourth and Frames podcast wherever you get them. And also, do not forget to lock in at fantasyandframes.com for the latest weekly IDP, Dynasty rankings, articles, takes, news and notes, whatever you need to be successful. We got it. I'm Rhett Manuel. I'm joined by my man Kyle Ziegler, Aiden Weingartner, and Jorge Edwards. Let's go around the frames. Kyle, how the heck are you tonight, man?
Man, I'm feeling great now. I'm feeling really good. I had a little back problem not too long ago, but put me down on the ground for a little bit, but we're working on getting that going here. We're getting that going. I'm ready for some fantasy talk. Running backs, 13 to 24. Let's roll, man.
And Aiden, how you feeling, buddy?
I'm great. Running backs every single year, always my favorite position to talk about, favorite position to invest in from Dynasty and redraft perspective. And it's really good at this early stage in mid to late May to look at some rankings and how I'm sure they'll change a million times over the summer, but it's always fun to debate and look at them right now, at least.
And last but certainly not least, the big cheese, the boss man, the one and only Jorge Edwards, running backs. How you feeling tonight, man?
I'm feeling great. Once we get into talking about our 13 to 24 running backs, I'll throw up our graphic here that we have courtesy of Jim, who does amazing graphics work for us here at Fantasy and Frames, along with Zach, FF Chalupa Batman, as most of you know him over on the X Machine. Excited to be here. Great to talk some running backs. Great to talk some redraft. It's been a while since I talked some redraft, so it's going to be great chopping it up with you all. And as soon as Drew joins us, it'll be great chopping up with him. We got a lot of great things going over at Fantasy Frames. Rhett, you mentioned it. We have a lot of podcasts. We have a lot of shows. We got a lot of articles, a lot of rankings. We got a lot of stuff heading your way. We are super excited for everything we got coming your way. And one of the things that we got coming our way real soon, I wanted to do a little early preview, is we got a couple Scott Fishbowl drafts coming up. We got a bunch of people, a lot of heavy hitters from the industry, a lot of fantasy celebrities joining us, friends of the Fantasy and Frames programming. So we're really looking forward to getting some of our crew and some of their crew together and playing some basketball on the shores of Lake Minnetonka, like Prince did with Charlie Murphy back from Chappelle's Show. Talk about a throwback reference, if there ever was one, right?
Yeah, that is well before Aiden's time as well, because I'm pretty sure he was either not living or barely living at that point. So just to test you real quick, Aiden, let's go ahead and do it. Let's put you on the spot. This is the quiz as to whether or not you know what we're talking about. Charlie Murphy, there's a new joke going around. What are the 5 fingers said to the face?
I have no idea what you're talking about.
Slap!
Okay.
Wow.
I don't know whether to down for next time.
I don't know whether to feel old or to feel embarrassed for Aiden. I don't know which to do.
Both.
Fair enough. Fair enough.
So we learned something about Aiden tonight. He needs to get up on his old sketch comedy culture. YouTube it, Chappelle's Show, Netflix, whatever. Aiden, just get your game up, buddy. But you know what? Let's get our game up talking news and notes around the league. And guys, where else are we going to start but with the weekly segment we like to call Let's Torture Rhett in Some New Way, Shape, or Form in Saints Watch 2025 with Derek Carr announcing his retirement. Guys, local social media was ablaze Probably for all the wrong reasons. There was probably much more of a celebration than you would expect from the New Orleans Saints fan base involving this retirement. But I'm just going to go ahead and start with you, Kyle. And after this Derek Carr retirement, what do you think is the outlook for the New Orleans Saints offensive players in fantasy football for 2025 after this announcement?
Well, I think, honestly, everyone takes a significant hit. Kamara to some degree, but not as much. Mostly the wideouts. I think we can all agree here on May 14th that Tyler Shuck will probably be the starter at the quarterback position, right?
Yeah, I think so.
I would think so, yeah.
And that doesn't get me overly excited. He could be very erratic. He's got an arm, though. He's 6'5", 219 pounds. It's just placing the ball more consistently is his issue. Especially when the pocket starts to collapse, he starts to get a little erratic back there. He's in the big boy league now, and he's been in college, 7 years? I think he backed up Justin Herbert at Oregon. Yes. That's how long it's been.
Van Wilder.
Through to Juwan Johnson.
So, I mean, he's a seasoned rookie, I guess.
Veteran rookie.
Maybe go ahead.
I was going to say, you all are agreeing on Tyler Shuck. My Spencer Rattler shares in a lot of dynasty leagues. I'm in disagree with you, and I'm putting out the juju right now. Come on, Spencer Rattler, win the job, but that's not going to happen. So never mind.
Well, I have
Jake Hayner.
I have Hayner, and
Jake Hayner, probably best known for his great photo shoot as a rookie a couple years back. But guys, just to update you on where the fan base is. Apparently, there is social media speculation that an undrafted rookie who was signed after a minicamp tryout, Hunter Deckers, people are calling for him to win the starting job here for the Saints in 2025. We are nothing if not delusional, ladies and gentlemen.
That's where we are.
And I would agree on everybody saying, hey, Saints position players take a significant hit. As does Jonathan Brooks' fantasy stock, as he is officially out for the 2025 season. I know this isn't a dynasty show, but as someone who has dynasty shares of him, I'm probably not feeling great about that at this point. But we're going to go ahead and just kick the news off on our RB2 rankings right now with this discussion, because every one of us has Chuba Hubbard ranked between running backs 18 and 22. So, Aiden, what do we think Chuba's outlook is for the 2025 season?
So I personally had him RB18, but I'm going to say right now that I'm not overly confident with that. I don't want to sound like going out on a limb here, but I fear that Chuba Hubbard kind of had a not one and done season, but I don't know if he can repeat it again just because it was such a special year. And I anticipate adding Tet McMillan, maybe Xavier Legette and Jalen Coker take a year or two leave, JT Sanders. I'm anticipating the Panthers to pass more, and I'm just kind of fearful that Chuba Hubbard kind of have a one-hit wonder feel and won't come close to repeating that production. I could be wrong. I'd happy to be wrong, but I'm personally not going to draft Chuba Hubbard just because I think he could disappoint relative to where he's going in draft right now and relative to what he did last year, if that makes sense. So I have him at RB18, but as the year gets closer and summer gets closer, I could see me moving him down a bit. That's just kind of a not confident placeholder right now.
Jorge, do you have any concerns about this running back room and the fact that even though they signed him to back up money, Rico Dowdle does have a 1,000-yard season in that back pocket, assuming that Aiden is right and this Chuba Hubbard thing is a one-year wonder. Does Rico Dowdle hold any value in your mind in terms of this Panthers backfield for 2025?
Only as a very desperate handcuff that I'm only looking to add to my roster if he is available, in the middle of the season. I actually, even though I'm kind of the lowest on Chuba Hubbard according to our rankings right now, have him at 22. I think his decline in rankings is not so much the fact that I think his situation has gotten worse. I just think there's been an influx of running back talent that is kind of pushing him down slightly. That being the case, as my RB2, I would be ecstatic to have Chuba Hubbard. I think they finally found the recipe for success in Carolina. Bryce Young has been resurrected. I mean, whoever thought that was going to happen.
Yeah.
They benched him. They benched him in the middle of the season. They were like saying it's over, it's done with. He comes back, he plays well. Chuba Hubbard, all of a sudden, people keep throwing, other running backs to compete with them. Like, what are they going to do? Oh, Chuba Hubbard, we're going to phase him out, and the guy just won't go away. He's like the Undertaker. He keeps sitting up. And so you just, I believe what we saw last year. There we go. Thank you, Rhett. I believe what we saw last year. I think that continues into this year. They wouldn't give him an extension, regardless if it's. They wouldn't have given him the extension they did if they did not see something that, at least for this coming year, could be fantasy gold there.
Yeah, hidden narratives that people aren't really going to talk about. I'm going to give Matt Kelly from Player Profiler credit on this, because at the draft, every team sends a representative. The Carolina Panthers sent Chuba Hubbard as their representative to announce picks at the draft. That's not a small thing. Whenever you're sending a guy up to the forefront, that kind of sends the message that this guy is going to have an important role in our team for the coming season. So I know it's a little bit of a weak narrative, bless you. But at the same time, it's kind of one of those things where it's like, okay, they didn't send Xavier Leggett at his deep fried Southern accent. They didn't send Bryce Young. They didn't send a variety of other people. They sent Chuba Hubbard. So to me, that matters at least a little bit, right?
Yep. That would be true. We got a question here from Dr. Barry McCockner.
Oh no.
Cockner? Is it? Come on. Is this real? Stop it. I don't know whether what's more fake, the name or the question. What round are we targeting Shedeur Sanders in redraft?
None.
We're not.
And I apologize if that's your name. I'm sorry about that.
Yeah, way to make fun of it.
Well, my name's Jorge. You could call me Whore for all you want. So if that makes you feel better, doctor, then I apologize.
No one called you that.
Well, he could be offended, and I apologize, and he could call me Whore. So there we go.
He could do that.
He could if he wanted.
So yeah, we appreciate everybody locking in with us tonight, including Brandon Holland, who says that the NFL has announced that it has shrunk to 29 televised teams. That's pretty good. I'm assuming the Saints aren't one of those, which I saw something tonight, by the way, that the New Orleans Saints have not been on Monday Night Football since 2021, when they played a 9-0 game against the Tampa Bay Buccaneers.
I think we're one too. I don't think the Titans have one.
Wow. So the doctor is back saying, send the Panthers to Brazil week 1. That field is garbage and almost killed Jordan Love last year. I'm sensing that there's some Panthers hate going on here, Dr. Barry. So maybe you can elaborate a little bit more in the chat.
But you know what? Before he goes ahead and elaborate, let's go ahead and let's get into our running back rankings for running backs 13 through 24. If you can go ahead and get that graphic up for us,
you bet.
Jorge.
You got it. 1 second. Clicking buttons. Here we go.
Invigorating radio.
It is really. Nope, that didn't work either. Let's just do this one. Invigorating radio. There we go. Okay. Rankings are up.
So there we have our rankings, and we could see our player rank consensus to the left, and then we have everyone's rankings up to the right. We have it up to running back 31, and as you can see, with these rankings, there are 4 different people giving you 4 completely different opinions, but we're going to go ahead and start off with you, Jorge, where you have Breece Hall. After an offseason where you guys all put me out there as being the A1 Breece Hall hater. Well, come to find out, we're looking at these rankings, and Jorge, not only do you have Breece Hall as the lowest ranked between me, Drew, Aiden, and yourself, but you have him 6 spots below me. So go ahead, tell us why. What has you concerned about Breece here in the 2025 season?
So I guess to piggyback off what you said, am I really the hater, or are you? Are you the fan, and am I the fan? I don't know. It's a lot of weird discrepancies here. Look, Breece Hall last year among qualified running backs was a running back 46 and missed tackles forced per attempt. It was a running back 5 and a running back stuff percentage. So basically, on 25% of his runs, he had a high run stuff percentage, which basically means he wasn't getting past his blockers. The offensive line is not addressed in terms of the interior line. They address the right tackle. You bring in Justin Fields, who you think is going to take away touches in the running game. Breece Hall, you add Taylor at tight end, who's a capable receiving tight end. You have a Jets run blocking offensive line per PFF ranked 21st last year. They didn't do anything to get better. It's one of those things where it's like you're basically asking him to run behind the same poor situation he had last year, and now you're giving him, more competition for touches. I understand that the Jets are going to be bad this year, and that they may want to throw to him more. At the same time, they addressed receiving options, as far as the tight end position, and they addressed running back options with Justin Fields. I'm having a hard time believing in Breece Hall as a viable option this year.
And I kind of get that because I looked at things like the stuffed run rate last year for 2024, and all those things were concerning me. And yet here I am sitting with Breece Hall at running back 13 for the season. And you guys were all telling me, wow, Rhett, what's the 180? What's the deal? And all I've ever said is that I didn't have trust in Breece Hall as a running back 1 going forward. Now, I understand we're splitting hairs between running back 12 and running back 13. But at the same time, what I see is this. I don't is Braylon Allen possibly a thing? Yeah, he's possibly a thing. But at the same time, this is an offense where I just see Breece Hall as a guy who is going to command touches. If he is healthy, I don't see a situation where he is not garnering 300 touches this season. And I get the fact that, yes, Justin Fields is going to be a little bit more of a threat to run the ball and all these things. But is it also possible that having an extra running threat on the field, like our good friend Girth Brooks said, which, by the way, what a name. He says he thinks he's going to be great and he can see him and Justin Fields running the option. Yes, having an extra focus to take the running, take eyes off of Breece Hall and possibly on new Justin Fields can mutually benefit both of them. So I do see a scenario where, yes, Breece Hall is better than he was last year. All that saying, it is still more of a volume play because this is a guy that averaged 4.1 yards per carry last year. His pass volume is due to go down because of the fact that Justin Fields is not going to check it down quite as much. So all this to say right now at running back 13 in May, there is definitely a chance for some fluctuation there.
Drew, welcome. What are your thoughts on Breece Hall?
I guess I'm a little higher on him. I've got him up at 13. I think that I don't think it's going to be as much of a committee as we're anticipating. I just think that Breece Hall is the better player, and I think he's going to end up getting a decent workload. And I do think that the offense could be better than expected. I think just I like whenever my running back has a rushing quarterback and the defense has to respect that on both ends. I think that's a positive. I know some people look at it as a negative because it takes attempts away. I know there's two different opinions on that, but that's the side that I sit on. So I think that the offensive line upgrades that they made, and just the talent of Breece Hall, contract year, Breece Hall too, hungry. Like I think the dude's going to smash, man. I just believe in Breece the player still.
Kyle, anything you want to add to that?
No, I kind of align with Drew. RB12, RB13. Value-wise at that, what was he, a first-round pick last year? Like back end of the first round? Now he's RB12. So, if we're going to get him there, I don't see anything wrong with that, honestly.
Right. And so moving in and staying within the division, let's talk to our resident biased person in Aiden Weingarten. Your boy, James Cook. You've got him at running back 14 for this season.
Yeah.
And as our resident Bills fan, I just needed to come to you to get your outlook for the season. Go ahead and give us that nonsense where you tell us why James Cook can end up being a running back 1 for the season, huh?
First of all, I don't appreciate you calling it nonsense. But second of all, I do think he could. The question was, he could finish the RB1. Yes, I absolutely do. Now, we talk about sticky points and stats in fantasy football year over year. James Cook, he's not 16 touchdowns. That's not going to happen again. I'll admit that. Even though I'm a biased Bills fan, apparently, I'm going to admit he's not going to have 16 touchdowns again. I anticipate that Josh Allen tush push still being around. Ray Davis will probably cut into that volume more than a bit, especially with goal line carries. So that 16 touchdown, that's not going to repeat. That's just not the kind of build James Cook is. He's a very good pass catching back, and in PPR formats like we usually talk about, I think he could absolutely finish as an RB1. I personally have him outside of that RB14, but I'm very high on James Cook still. I just don't think he's like going to repeat the 16 touchdown thing, get nearly as much goal line volume as he did last year. But I think him finishing as a top 12 running back, maybe even the upper echelon of that, is absolutely in the realm of possibility because he doesn't get a ton of volume, but he's very efficient on that volume and very explosive with that volume.
But wasn't the narrative last year the same thing for James Cook? The goal line touches, the red zone touches. Didn't we were worried about that last year, and he answered the call.
In an extremely outlier fashion.
Yeah, I was going to say, that's an outlier. 16 rushing touchdowns ain't happening 2 years in a row with a running back who's sub 200 pounds.
Well, he was near top 10 on carries inside the 5. He scored 7 times from there.
Yeah, but I just think Ray Davis is going to cut into that more, especially this year.
That's what we said last year, though, right?
I mean, I wasn't saying it, but
I was just spicing it up a little bit.
He had a 7.7% TD rate last year, which was a full percentage point higher than the next closest running back.
Astronomically high.
And then last year, the year before, he only had 2 touchdowns on 237 attempts. So the attempts didn't go up. And the attempts didn't go up that much from the year prior to this year, but the touchdowns astronomically went up. Like, it's just, there's no way he can replicate that. There has to be some type of
there's going to be negative regret. Yeah, I was going to say 2 to 6, going from 4 rushing touchdowns in your first 2 years and then going to 16. That's kind of an outlier.
It's a high-powered offense in Buffalo.
It is. He does still have that going for him, but like it's crazy. Even the usage was weird. Like last year, he was 48th in snap share, which was 37th among running backs, and he had a 35.2% route share, which was 36th best. Like the usage wasn't even really all that consistent, but he got all the money touches and he made a lot of them, and so it is what it is. It's just a hard season to repeat. And I've never been a James Cook guy, so I'm trying not to have take luck, but I don't know. He is still in a really good offense, and the reality is they really didn't add significant pieces to the offense either. So he's still going to be a key part of it. He's still going to be one of the best playmakers on that offense. So I'm not saying he's going to go back to scoring 2 touchdowns, but I'm just not expecting 16 again.
Maybe 8 to 10.
Yeah, I think that's fair. Yeah.
Not 16.
Yeah.
Yeah, and I think if a guy like Cook ends up with 8 to 10 touchdowns at his size, you're still looking at a very productive season from a guy who probably shouldn't be as effective as he is around the goal line at his size. But we just mentioned outliers, and Kyle, we are looking at these rankings, and as you see in the consensus, between us 4, we have DeAndre Swift around running back 28. Kyle, you super do not have DeAndre Swift as running back 28. Matter of fact, you are the only one of us to have him in the top 24. And then you've got him at running back 18. Listen, this is a new regime in Chicago. The narrative seems to be allegedly that Ben Johnson hates DeAndre Swift. That's why they got rid of him in Detroit the first time. So go ahead and tell me why you are so high on DeAndre Swift heading into this season.
Well, he obviously has a clear path to touches once again this season. Last year, he held down a 62.8% snap share. I don't see that changing. They got Roschon Johnson and rookie 7th rounder Kyle Monangai behind him. Don't get me wrong. I like those running backs, but they aren't threatening him for touches in 2025. And let me address the elephant in the room head on. You guys are going to point to his measly 3.8 yards per carry last season. Fair. Well, the Bears addressed that offensive line this year because they sucked last year. Garbage, rubbish. PFF actually had them ranked 28 out of 32. It was bad, but they addressed it. They signed Drew Dahlman. They traded for 4-time Pro Bowler left guard Joe Tooney, And they traded for Jonah Jackson, shout out Drew's Rams, who, might I add, also been to a Pro Bowl. Now, did I mention Ben Johnson yet? Yeah, we talked about that. He's the new head coach in Chicago. What did we see out of Gibbs and Montgomery? Swift, to me, is a combination of both of those backs. He can catch the ball. He can run through the tackles as well. One final point. Last season, Swift was 6th in yards per reception, 12th in yards after catch per reception, and his quarterback, and Caleb Williams, loves to check down to his running backs. Last year, or not last year, but his end of the season at USC, coming out of college, he led the nation in running back screen pass rate, 16.2%. That's per PFF. He could quietly climb into the top 10 in receptions, DeAndre Swift. So that's why I like him.
I mean, that's a pretty bold argument. It's also a pretty good argument in terms of why we are so high on DeAndre Swift. So, Drew, I'm just going to go ahead and bounce it to you because you're second highest. So there's obviously some agreement between you and Kyle among DeAndre Swift. So go ahead and tell me why you have him at running back 25 and just give me the argument on, is it something similar? Do you see something a little bit different? Do you trust the offensive line situation that much?
I do trust the offensive line, yeah, and I do believe that we're going to see an upgrade in the offense in general just because of Ben Johnson. I do agree with Kyle on all those points. We'll never know how much the Bears were hoping to be able to draft a running back, and the board just didn't fall their way, and they kind of just did they back into having DeAndre Swift as a starter, or is it just where they're at because they're happy with Swift? Like we don't know, but right now, regardless of how you feel about DeAndre Swift, I think right now, whenever you look at that backfield, he's the clear most talented back. And maybe that's just my personal opinion. I've never been a big Roschon Johnson guy. Kyle guy was one of the few backs in this draft that I wasn't a big fan of. I liked the large majority of the running backs in this class, but he was one that I wasn't huge on. So, I still think Swift has some game, and this is easily going to be the best setup he's had in a while as far as the offense goes. So I think that there's a path for touches there, and it's a good enough offense to warrant him being in that, back in RB2 discussion just off of that as well.
I got a question. Do you think there's not going to be, I know he's going to get, we love volume for fantasy, but are you worried at all that there's not going to be enough explosive plays efficiency-wise at all, or you just care about volume most?
Well, I mean, I think if anybody in the backfield is going to give him explosive plays, Swift's probably the best bet to do that. If we're being honest, I don't think Roschon or Monangai are more explosive than he is. So, if there's lack of explosive plays from Swift, I'm just not sure who they're going to turn to be able to improve that based on who they have on the roster right now.
And he was down on explosive plays last year. It was down, but now you got Ben Johnson, who's top 10 at creating plays. I think he's going to create big plays for DeAndre Swift to make that happen.
I was just referring to his low yards per carry, and he's never been the most flashiest guy.
Yeah, no, you're right. You're not wrong. There's definitely reasons to be concerned.
No, there's
That's
an
why
argument
he did.
There
That's why he slightly missed out on the top 24. But he was the one I struggled the most leaving out, though. I think that the offseason has just broke really well for Swift. I was completely in the camp of I was expecting Chicago to find his replacement through the draft. I was 100% expecting that. So I thought Swift came out a winner on the other end of that.
And you know what? He's actually I know that I'm very generous on Swift. I got him super high. If you can get Swift at RB 25, 26, 27, 28, that dude's got a runway to outperform that average draft position by a mile, in my opinion.
Yeah.
And so that DeAndre Swift discussion kind of just illustrates how wide open this 13 through 24 discussion is, because with a lot of us, we have a lot of these same names that are going on there. Breece Hall, James Cook, Joe Mixon, a bunch of other guys. So, Drew, do you have all these guys kind of in a tier together, or how do you look at the running backs that are at the front end of this RB2 13 through 24 range?
Yeah, I mean, so my third tier of my running back rankings technically goes from running back 11 to running back 16. I think any of those guys, I can pretty easily see a world where they finish the season as an RB1, and that tier might even be able to be stretched a little bit more, to be honest. But I'm just a little bit higher on Chase Brown and Kenneth Walker, and so I have those guys at 11 and 12. Just spoiler alert for next week's show. But I think Brees, Kyron Williams, James Cook, Joe Mixon, I think they could easily end up as an RB1 as well. So there is a split there, but then the next chunk of RB2s is a mix of rookies and veterans that I still think have some left too, that I'm really interested in as well. So that part gets this area of running backs I like a little bit more than I have in years past.
Yeah, and I mean, we're sitting here right now, and you're talking about the running back rankings, and the thing about this running back too, the back end right now, we don't have a question to discuss it. But if you look at running backs 20 through 22, we are going to talk about Amari and Hampton a little bit, but these are all rookie guys that we're kind of just like, oh, these are all guys that have upside. But that brings me to where we are around the frames. And let's talk about these Chargers running backs in this backfield discussion, because based off of our rankings, it looks like we've got a little bit of a split there. So first we have Team Najee Harris with Jorge and Aiden, who have them inside their top 24, while me and Drew are on Team Amari and Hampton, and we both have them have him as a running back too. So I'm gonna let both of you state your case as to why you feel that Najee Harris is going to be a startable asset for the whole of the 2025 season. Let's start with you, Jorge.
You go back to every season that Najee Harris has been in the league since 2021. Behind one of the worst offensive lines when it comes to run blocking, he has managed to put up at least 1,000 yards rushing in each and every one of those seasons. We look at his yards per attempt, it has gone up every single season. You look at his missed tackles force, his elusiveness has gone up every single season. You look at from a fantasy standpoint, in half PPR scoring in 24, he was the RB20. In 23, he was the RB23. In 2022 is the RB14. So it's one of those situations where, I get it. They brought him in and technically they could cut bait after 1 year. And yes, I'm not saying Amari and Hampton is not the future at the running back position for the Los Angeles Chargers. But again, we're talking about these rankings, in May. And for me, it's one of those things where before I get the anointing oil, as Bill Parcells used to say back in the day when referencing Tony Romo, let me see him take the job first before I start, bumping him up rankings, this early. Maybe come August, does that change? We'll find out. I mean, that's the opportunity that we're looking for. But for right now, we look at Najee Harris. He went to Alabama. I want to say that Harbaugh wanted to recruit him at Michigan. He was big on him when he was a Michigan coach. And so it's one of those things where I missed out on him in the collegiate level. And now all of a sudden I have an opportunity to bring him in to the pros as a running back. You look at the offensive line for the Los Angeles Chargers. I mean, this is going to be the best offensive line he's ever had. And so if he can, make chicken salad out of, what in Pittsburgh, I think he has tremendous upside, RB2 upside this coming year. And not mention the fact that he's done really well from a fantasy standpoint, again, behind a bad offensive line. I mean, I get it. Omari and Hampton, I get it. He's the future. He's talented. He can do a lot of things that Najee can't. He's, at the same time, he needs to take it first. And until Najee shows that he can't improve upon what he's done in Pittsburgh, I think it's Najee Harris's job.
Yeah, I want to sound off on that in a little bit, but I'm going to let Aiden talk first.
So I've always personally been a defender of Najee, as you may or may not know. Is he the most explosive or most efficient guy in the world? No, but he's very consistent. He'll get the job done. 4 years under Mike Tomlin, 1,000 yards each year. And I think people forget that. Everyone's expecting, Marion Hampton, he'll take over in the first 3 or 4 weeks. Marion Hampton this, Marion Hampton that. But what if that just never happens? If you look at Najee Harris and Marion Hampton, more or less, they're the same running backs. Najee Harris is pretty much a more veteran version of Hampton, Similar builds, similar skill sets, and honestly, similar projected roles in this offense. Jorge was talking about, Harbaugh wanted him at Michigan. He ends up going to Alabama, Harris that is, and now 8 or so years later, Harbaugh gets his guy in the NFL. So I think he's going to utilize Harris. And what if Hampton just never takes over like people are expecting, whether he struggles with the playbook or just their skill sets are too similar and Harbaugh really wants to rely on the veteran. I'm not looking. This could be an annoying split, but I think Harris is more of a startable asset in Hampton than year one, and then Hampton is more of a future play, if that makes sense.
And this is where I'm going to go ahead and bounce back with. We're talking about what if Omarion Hampton never takes the job from Najee Harris? Fine. What if he never takes the job from Najee Harris? But we're talking about this guy being a similar player, where with Najee Harris versus Omarion Hampton is coming in with a 4.46 40-yard dash. He's coming in with a 94th percentile speed score, a 91st percentile burst score. And you're saying, well, what if he doesn't take the job? And you're talking about this being the best line Najee Harris has ever played behind, this, that, and everything else. Fine. At the same time, Omarion Hampton is also playing behind this offensive line. It's the same offensive line. They don't change it for different dudes last time I checked. Najee Harris was 4th in the league last year with 50 stuffed runs, which means 1 in every 5 carries that dude had, he was being stuffed behind the line of scrimmage. He got his volume last year. He got his yards last year against light fronts. He averaged 4.8 yards per carry against light fronts, which is, by the way, still only 53rd in the league compared to a base front carry rate where he averaged 3.7 yards per carry against base fronts. So you're giving me all this stuff talking about what if. But at the end of the day, Najee Harris is not explosive. He hasn't proven to be that pass catcher that he was in year one since year one. At the end of the day, okay, fine. He was paid a little bit of money. Jim Harbaugh recruited him a decade ago. You know what I was doing a decade ago?
Not being a pro NFL running back?
Maybe not.
Not talking about fantasy football online either. Bottom line, things can change in 8 years.
Not his production. His production has been consistent
Yeah.
His production is garbage.
But it's
1,000 yards every single year.
1,000 yards is now we're scoffing at 1,000 yards consistently behind
4
his
straight
offensive
years.
line.
It's the last couple years it has been more volume based, and like whenever it comes to Najee at this point, you know what he's going to give you in terms of him being available. He's going to play 17 games. He's going to be decent, but he's not, to Rhett's point, he's not explosive. Whenever you look at running backs that had at least 300 carries last year, he was 29th in explosive run percentage, and he was 28th in yards after contact per attempt. And then you look at Omarion Hampton, whenever you look at draft-eligible running backs with at least 100 rushing attempts, he was 4th in missed tackles forced, and he was 4th in yards after contact per attempt. So he has – I do agree him and Najee are the same in terms of they're both really good at breaking tackles, but he does more with the extra with the extra work that he gets, and he's more explosive on top of that. Rhett mentioned the 94th percentile speed score, the 91st percentile burst score, the stuff that Najee's not going to give your offense. And if you think that Hampton's explosiveness and tackle breaking ability that did translate to the end that showed in college, if you think it's going to translate to the NFL level, like I think it's going to, I think it's going to be hard for them to keep him off the field for very long, especially once you consider the first round draft capital that they invested in this guy. Whenever they had plenty of other holes they could have filled in the first round, they chose after signing Najee Harris to still spend their first round pick on this kid. And whenever you talk about them signing Najee, the draft pick investment they made in Hampton, he's now making like less than $1 million more than Najee this year. Like the price gap really isn't even there. So I don't know, man. Like the Chargers were 12th in rushing attempts last year, but despite that, they only averaged the 17th most rushing yards per game, and their running backs combined to average 4.1 yards per carry, which was 18th in the league. So they were fine. Like they were cool. J.K. Dobbins, Gus Bus, they were all right. And I think Najee, if you gave him the work, I think he'd be fine. I think he'd be all right. He'd probably be 17th, 18th in the league in yards per carry, stuff like that. But using the first round investment on a running back, clearly they weren't fine with all right, and they want more. And like Hampton's the only guy in that room that's going to give them more. And they just invested first round draft capital on a running back, which is supposed to be a no-no. So it's hard for Hampton is a guy that like to start the year, I think Najee's involved, absolutely. But I think that Hampton looks like a guy that's going to take over sooner rather than later. And then whenever you break it down, like on a points per game basis, he could easily be a top 12 running back down the stretch. And that's the kind of upside that I want to target at running back.
And just a quick point to what Drew was saying. Just a quick point, as he was saying, and they only signed Najee Harris to a 1-year, $6.2 million deal. So there's not a lot invested in Harris this upcoming season.
But doesn't that? I'm sorry. Go ahead.
I was just gonna say, what if, because the whole like unrestricted free agent tender they placed on Leslie. What if J.K. Dobbins finds his way back to this Chargers team this summer? Like then what?
Care.
Then this is just going to be weird.
I still would not care. Hampton is also miles ahead at this point in Dobbins' career.
They like him though.
Well.
They gave him all that volume last year.
Yeah, you could never have enough vets in the room, but to me, I would look at it as nothing but a depth move. It wouldn't concern me about Hampton anymore. I wouldn't move Hampton at all.
So let me ask you, and this is open to anybody. Who's the value? Are you getting Hampton later in drafts, or are you getting Najee later in drafts? I know we're predicting things a few months early, but like, who's the value pick here at running back for the Chargers?
I think Najee. I think people are more hyped on the
there.
So I got it up here right now. According to friends of the program, Underdog Fantasy, current ADP on Amari and Hampton on Underdog is 40.5. Whereas the current ADP on Najee Harris is 68.8. Wow. So per those metrics, you have about 2.5 rounds of data where Najee Harris is going behind Amari and Hampton.
And I don't think to be fair, I also don't think the gap will be that big in your typical redraft leagues. Like Underdog, best ball, you're shooting for upside. Hampton is the clear upside play in that backfield. Like I don't, even if you like Najee, I think it's hard to disagree with that. So it makes sense for his best ball ADP to be inflated a little bit. I don't think the redraft gap will be that high. So it's tough to really know what that's going to look like come August, but I think Underdog is looking at it the right way, though. I do.
To answer Jorge's question, neither. Take DeAndre Swift.
This guy.
And look, just in case we wanted to go ahead and look at it differently, in the FFPC, which is these high stake fantasy players, there is an even bigger gap between Amari and Hampton and Najee Harris. Amari and Hampton in FFPC formats is current ADP of 42nd overall, which is the 406 and running back 14, compared to Najee Harris going at 94th overall in the late in the 8th round and at running back 31.
I'm fine taking Najee at that point. I think 31.
Yeah,
I think round 31 is where I've got him. Like I'm good with taking Najee at that point. I'm still good with taking Hampton where he's going too. Not on the same team. I don't want the whole backfield to take place your bet. But
J.K. Dobbins.
Like I'm good drafting either of those guys at either of those spots at that point.
You should take all Chargers running backs in best ball. That
Kamani
Vidal,
Rocket Sanders.
That feels like a fever dream at this point. What in the world was Kamani Vidal? What were we doing? What were y'all doing? I'm not putting myself in that. What the hell were y'all doing?
What were we doing?
Go back to last year's episode and cut the tape and let's see who said anything about Kamani Vidal.
Drew claims he wasn't part of it.
It was me. It was me. But guys, let's keep talking rookie running backs because Jorge, we're all fairly bullish on TreVeyon Henderson. You are very bullish on TreVeyon Henderson, having him as your running back 18. You have him as the second best running back behind Ashton Jeanty among rookies. We'll talk about him next week. Spoiler alert. Do you think that TreVeyon has the juice and the ability to take over the backfield from Ramondre Stevenson to start the season?
Absolutely. I think the drafting of the offensive lineman in the first round for the Patriots, the bringing in Stephon Diggs, say what you will about Stephon Diggs. I mean, he is a body. He can still hopefully, put up wide receiver, borderline 2-3 numbers, as his floor. But I'm not expecting the Patriots just to turn around and be one of these super competitive teams, a year later. I think this is one of those, let's insulate, Drake May as best as possible. And what do? You go and invest a draft pick in TreVeyon Henderson, who is one of the better pass catching running backs, as well as one of the best north-south running backs. I think it's that pass catching ability that gives the half PPR players or the full PPR players reason for optimism. You look at Ramondre Stevenson, not great as a receiving option. You look at his elusiveness, like near the bottom of like the top 50 running backs. Like just he doesn't have it. He's very one dimensional in this game. At least he was last year. You bring a more complete skill set to Trayvon Henderson. I think game script is going to be on Trayvon Henderson's side. You mentioned Ashton Janty. That's volume. I think this is a situation where game script is going to pay a lot of dividends for the New England Patriots, and that's why I have Henderson where I have him at. I think it's set at 18.
Yeah, when I did my rankings and I had Trevion at 24, I thought I was being high on him. And now I'm looking at this list and I'm looking at everything and I'm like, all right, I'm the lowest. Kyle, where'd you have him in your rankings? Just out of curiosity.
I actually didn't go that far. I just went to 24, but if I did a quick thought on him, they still got Ramondre. They're going to use him, I think. So I would probably have him at like running back 28, 29, 30.
We're gonna get asked a question later. I'm gonna talk about it more, but I'll just say I'm with Jorge. I like Henderson a lot.
I love the call too. Yeah.
So we'll talk about him some more in a little bit.
And let's talk about another running back right now. Kyle, you've got Caleb Johnson. Speaking of running backs, you're high on as running back 23, which is 11 spots higher than I have him. I happen to be a Jalen Warren believer, but that's just me.
Whoa.
With Najee's departure from the Steelers, does the clear path for touches make him the clear RB2 in your opinion for redraft rankings and redraft purposes?
Yeah, it's another volume play as the RB1 on the Pittsburgh Steelers. He's the makeup of a workhorse. I mean, he's 6'1", 224. Najee's out there enjoying the California weather, which means his RB1 is almost guaranteed. We know what Jalen Warren is. He's a receiving back. That's his prototype. Johnson is a physical runner. Don't sleep on his pass catching ability, though. I mean, he can catch the football. He caught 22 last year in his last season at Iowa. And remember, he took one to the house for 72 yards against Nebraska. He's one of my favorite sleepers this year that I'm targeting in my rookie dynasty drafts a lot. Ashton Jeanty is like a top 5 running back, but Caleb Johnson for value, 5X later. I think you get more bang for your buck with Caleb Johnson in Pittsburgh than you will Ashton Jeanty.
I don't agree with that, but I do like Caleb Johnson though. I do think he's a good value running back 26. I think that's good value. I've got him at running back 22. So I do like where he's being drafted right now. I do think that he's got I think he's going to step right into that Najee role, which was I mean it seems like he flirted with 200, like somewhere between 250 to 300 carries every year. So I do think that's going to be there. And Kyle, I agree with you too. I think that he's an underrated pass catcher. Like he wasn't asked to do a ton at Iowa. Whenever he did well with it, especially his last year in school. I agree. I still think Jalen Warren's going to have a role, but I think that he's going to step into some really good volume. And the only concern I really have is what if he just turns into a 2-down back on a bad offense, and then you're at that point, you're needing rushing touchdowns to hopefully be there to elevate his ceiling. And if you're in a bad offense, how often are you going to be in the position to score anyway? And so there is still that concern. If we get to draft season and it's clear that we got a full season of Mason Rudolph and Will Howard ahead of us, he's probably going to drop a couple spots for me. But I'm still holding out hope they're going to do something. I don't care how you feel about Aaron Rodgers. At this point in his career, he is 1,000% an upgrade over what they have in that quarterback room right now. So if they do something like that to lift the offense, I'll be more confident in where he's at, but it's going to get a little murky if that quarterback room looks the way it does in August.
I feel like there's got to be a backdoor deal with Aaron Rodgers. So why would they go into the draft and
Kirk Cousins?
I know. Trade for Kirk. Even as rough as he's been, that would still be an upgrade.
But I know that it's very risky to trust Aaron Rodgers on a handshake deal. But
yeah, that's not going to work.
There's got to be something behind closed doors, man, because
I don't know. We'll see.
It's May now. So.
I like Caleb Johnson, the player, though. I agree with you on that.
And Kyle, just to make you feel better about your take as running back 23, FFPC drafters have him at the exact same spot, running back 23, and his ADP is currently 69 in FFPC games, which is around the 609. So late 6th round capital versus Jalen Warren, which is at the 908. over there as well. So significant difference right there. It seems like we're having a lot of the. Seems like the FFPC is just higher on these rookie running
It's a
backs
smart
so
move.
far this year.
Great
But
pick, Andrea.
once-
Great pick.
So let's go ahead and let's move into Kyle's team. But Aiden's going to take the question about the Tennessee Titans because, sorry, Kyle, we'll
I
let
don't
you
care.
chime in. But Aiden is highest on Tony Pollard at running back 20. With Cam Ward, first overall pick, being the guy at quarterback, does he raise the ceiling for you, Aiden? Or are there other aspects about Tony Pollard that you're
I
excited
think it's a
about?
mixture of both. I think Ward first absolutely raises the ceiling. I think it's obviously so much of a better, improved offensive ecosystem, as I like to say, than last year. And last year, I made the mistake of fading Tony Pollard because I anticipated it to be more of a split between Pollard and Spears. I was dead wrong on that. Spears
Me too.
barely got any work at all. Maybe he should have. Like, he didn't even get work in the receiving game. It's like change of pace, nice scat back. Like Pollard, he got rushing work, he got receiving work, he got those money goal line carries that we like to see in fantasy. So I made the mistake of fading him last year because of the presence of Spears, and I'm not making that same mistake again last year. But Drew, I'm glad to know that I didn't get. I'm not the only one that made the mistake of the perceived split between Spears and Pollard.
No, I was a Spears guy too, man. I thought the same, and so I ended up squeezing Pollard into my
I'm not
RB2
doing it again.
rankings.
Yeah.
No, I'm with you. And I mean, Spears, whenever Pollard did go down toward the end of the year, Spears looked good. Like, it would make sense for them to have a split. Like, they're two talented
just don't.
players. But we'll see what the coaching tendencies are again this year. But yeah, I'm comfortable taking Pollard where he's going right now. I mean, like, his best ball, ADP right now, he's the running back 28 on Underdog. Like,
That's a value.
I'm perfectly comfortable with that ADP right now.
Mm-hmm.
Kyle, what are your thoughts on that Titans backfield heading into the year? Who's the guy? Who are you drafting?
Well,
between
it's
those
going to
two?
be Tony Pollard. He's my RB22. The biggest question mark for me is the offensive line. PFF ranked him 28 out of 32 last year, mostly due to pass blocking, though. But their run blocking is a little bit better, but still not that great. It doesn't matter, though, because the new GM, Mike Bergonski, he's cleaned house. I think the only dude that's still standing there on the offensive line is Peter Skoronski, and that's it.
Mm-hmm.
They brought in new people. So we don't really know what the offensive line's truly going to look like. If they improve it, say, moderately, I think he can outperform this ADP here as RB22.
Agreed.
Yep. And so moving from these young running backs and also Tony Pollard and Cam Ward, Drew, I'm going to put the spotlight on you right now because you are the only one within our rankings that doesn't have Aaron Jones or David Montgomery inside your top 24. What gives?
So part of it for me is just my philosophy with how I like to approach the running back position and redraft once you get out of the elite established guys. And we already talked about it a little bit with Hampton. It's prioritizing the younger running backs that if they have a college profile that I like and they have draft capital that I can get excited about, second round, ideally, but I'm okay with third round as well, or obviously round one. And for me, all of Hampton, Harvey, Henderson, Caleb Johnson, Judkins, they all fit the bill. So that's just naturally going to push some guys down. And with Montgomery, I think part of it's just given the trajectory with Gibbs' career, he's going to continue to demand more and more touches as the gap in their talent continues to widen, as Montgomery gets a little bit older and Gibbs continues to get into his prime. And even more so than in years past, you're going to be hoping that the red zone touches and the touchdown luck continues with Montgomery. And that's a gamble that I just really don't like making. I know the coaching staff loves Montgomery, and I have no doubt that he's still going to be involved, but there's just so many other young, talented running backs that also have passed the touches that I prefer to take the shot on instead. And with Aaron Jones, honestly, I'm not sure if he's the best running back on his own team. I know Jones did have 100 more rushing yards or rushing attempts than Jordan Mason last year, so take the efficiency data with a little bit of salt. But Jordan Mason had a higher yards per carry, a higher explosive run percentage, a higher missed tackles forced per attempt, and yards after contact per attempt. I think that Jones will be the lead back to start the year, but I don't think it's crazy to think that Jordan Mason could end up being the more efficient runner. Aaron Jones still be involved in the passing game, but then Mason takes on a more involved role than any other backup running back did for Minnesota last year. They had with Cam Akers, Ty Chandler, those guys weren't not Ty Montgomery throwback, but Ty Chandler, those guys, they didn't do much last year, and I think Jordan Mason is a clear step above that. And I'm not trying to get too excited about the fact that they traded for him, but I do think that there's something to it, even if it was just trading a couple day 3 picks for Mason and a day 3 pick. I did think it was interesting they chose to go trade for Mason ahead of the draft in such a stacked running back class. And I think that he could end up being the best runner in this backfield, and ends up being more of a 50-50 split than people are anticipating. So Mason's the guy I prefer to take a shot on in that backfield. And then there's other rookies that I'm just really excited about this year that have pushed some of these guys down. So Jones and Montgomery ended up being the odd men out for me.
Yeah, and I hear you on the Aaron Jones thing and Jordan Mason. You mentioned them trading for Jordan Mason, and I know the extension wasn't crazy money, but not only did they trade for Jordan Mason, they immediately signed him to a 2-year extension immediately after trading for him. So, I mean, yeah, do I think Aaron Jones has one more good year in him? Absolutely. Do I think in the long term, it's obvious that Jordan Mason is in their plans, and we're going to start to see that this year as well, too. But I want to go ahead and let's finish on a strong note, guys. I want to go around the frames. We're going to start at the top of the frame with Kyle and then work our way down. Kyle, let's start with you. Which running back that is outside of your top 20 do you think has the best chance to finish as an RB1 this season?
Drew's probably going to smile and laugh, but I'm going to go with my boy, Caleb Johnson on the Pittsburgh Steelers.
Wow.
It's a volume play for me. I get his concerns. I get all that, bad offense, this and that. But at the end of the day, Pittsburgh is known to run the football and run it well. You got Arthur Smith there. I'm going with Caleb Johnson.
Wait.
I mean, for all the reasons we were talking, are you asking me for my running back next, or you want to comment on what he was just talking about?
Around the frames, which outside of your top 20 has the best chance to finish as
Brian Robinson of the Washington Commanders. The Commanders, they didn't address early draft capital at the running back position. On Dynasty 365, Aiden, you and I and JT, we were talking about weeks before the draft, like he could be a buy low right now because, there's a lot of talk that the Commanders want to get a running back.
Yeah.
And, they didn't address that with, the draft capital that is ever so important. And now he has the backfield to himself. We go back 2 years ago when he was healthy, he finished as the RB 24 in fantasy points per game in half PPR scoring. Last year, he was dealing with an injury. And obviously his play suffered on the field, but the fact that the Commanders didn't invest an earlier pick in a running back, it just tells me that Brian Robinson is due for a bounce back year. Everybody, Drew, you mentioned it earlier. There are two sides of the coin. Either you have a mobile quarterback that helps the running back, and there are other sides of the coin that, it's the other way around. If you're on the side that thinks that, the mobile quarterback helps the running back, well, then that's really good for Ryan Robinson Jr. And the Commanders.
Spicy. I like it.
Yeah.
Aiden?
So I'm after thinking about, I'm going to kind of cheat here, but I'm going to go with both rookie running backs, RJ Harvey and Trey Van Henderson. I both think they have equal opportunities to finish inside that top 12 RB1 role because, one, Henderson, he's not a guy that profiles as he's going to receive a ton of volume on this Patriots offense, but he's just so explosive and efficient to the point where I'm willing to bet on it, and he provides elite receiving upside, which we love for fantasy IFC. And then Harvey projected, this is just a perfect role and fit with Sean Payton's offense. I'm not saying that RJ Harvey's Alvin Kamara, but in terms of projected role and workload with Sean Payton, you can see the similarities between the two. So I love these both two running backs. They're young and explosive. So that's who I'm going to go with.
Drew?
I love the RJ Harvey call. He was too high for me to mention him because he's inside my top 20 already. But I'm glad somebody else gave him some love.
21 for me.
I love that. I know Jorge already talked about him, and so did Aiden as well. But I mentioned it earlier. It's Trayvon Henderson for me as well. Like I thought that he was the second best running back in this draft behind Ashton Genty, and I'm actually pretty excited about a couple pieces of the Patriots offense this year and the improvements they made to the offensive line as well. And I know that Ramondre is technically still there, but it's similar to what I talked about with Hampton and to a lesser extent Jordan Mason. I just think the talent could win out sooner rather than later. And Henderson, he's an extremely strong runner. He's a great pass catching back. He's playing next to what I think is a great quarterback that still has limited options even post-draft to throw to. And along with being a great pass catching back, he's also arguably the best pass blocking back in the draft as well. So I don't think the coaching staff is going to be hesitant to put him on the field sooner rather than later. And given his explosiveness, the pass catching upside, the limited pass catching options, I could definitely see a world where he's an RB1 this season if the backfield becomes his sooner rather than later. And I don't think Ramondre is much of a roadblock, to be honest.
And so I'm going to go ahead and finish this off. You guys went down the whole rookie rant with Harvey and Trevion Henderson. And listen,
he's sick of these young guys.
No. I'm not
With these old people there.
I'm going to go with RJ
You're
Harvey
with the young bucks. Let's go.
Here's why. Let's play a little game of
draft these young running backs, baby. Do it.
Let's just play this game that I like to call who? Y'all ready for this?
Oh boy. Yeah.
Audric Estime. Who?
Notre Dame running back. Oh.
Jaleel McLaughlin. Who? That's all.
I like them.
I love the comparison of Alvin Kamara, and I love this because when Sean Payton finds himself a shiny toy that can catch themselves a football, you can go back to the New Orleans Saints days where Pierre Thomas was an undrafted free agent, and he had the ability to catch the football, and he had a role. And when he had a guy like Alvin Kamara who could catch the ball and be explosive, it was wheels up from the jump. So it's just one of those situations where Sean Payton seems like he's trying to get the band back together in Denver in a different way. Like he's got his little accurate quarterback in Bo Nix. He's got what he's calling supposedly Michael Thomas-esque in Pat Bryant. He's got an alleged Joker. By the way, I keep saying this. What the heck is a Joker? I don't know.
Taysom Hill.
Guy that does everything.
Taysom Hill.
Yeah, you actually have an answer for that, Kyle? It's been a buzzword for all these years for me, and I never knew what it meant. But apparently, it's supposed to be somebody who does everything.
They throw the football.
But yeah, either way, I really like the RJ Harvey call as well. But let's go ahead. We just talked about guys who we think can end up as an RB1. Which running back do we have around the frames inside of our top 20 that has the best chance to fall out of the top 24? And go ahead. Let's start with Kyle again.
Well, this one I think is pretty easy for me. I think everybody's actually going to agree with it, and it's going to be Chuba Hubbard. He looked great last year, 1,100 yards, but that's the first time he's ever done it. He did 900 yards previously before that. I just want to see more out of him, more out of that offense. I don't know if I just quite trust it yet. So I'm going to go Chuba Hubbard just out of just pure, I just don't believe in him quite yet.
Hey, I want to add to that too, because I wasn't here to talk Chuba at the beginning of the show. My issue with Chuba really, it doesn't have anything to do with him as a player either. Honestly, it's almost like the volume that was given to him almost out of necessity, because last year, I mean, they knew they weren't going to have Jonathan Brooks to start the year, but behind Chuba there was Miles Sanders and Raheem Blackshear. At the end of the year, Bryce Young was the second leading rusher on the team, and he had less attempts than Miles Sanders. Like he outrushed Miles Sanders, sorry ass, on less attempts as the quarterback. Like that's what they were dealing with behind Chuba Hubbard while they didn't have Jonathan Brooks. And then I'm sure they didn't expect to lose Jonathan Brooks as soon as they got him back either. And so, from like week 6 on, he was basically playing 80+% of snaps every single week. And while I don't think that Rico Dowdle is the best running back in the world, I do think that he is a huge upgrade compared to Miles Sanders and Raheem Blackshear. And I don't think that they're going to feel the need to give Chuba Hubbard 80+% of the snaps anymore. They're going to be able to keep him more fresh. Because I mean, like whenever you look at Rico Dowdle and Chuba Hubbard last year, if you look at numbers like their yards per carry, their stuff percentage, their missed tackles forced per attempt, their yards after contact per attempt, they're not that far off from each other. They were pretty similar production players from a production standpoint last year, and you can't say anything close to that for the players that were playing behind Chuba last year. And so, like, I still think Chuba is a good player. I think he's going to be the lead back in this offense. I'm basically just saying I think we need to be paying more attention to Rico Dowdle at the end of your drafts, and I don't know if the volume is going to be there the way that it was last year. So I don't think that he's a bad value or anything necessarily, but I do see where Kyle's coming from, though.
I agree.
Jorge, which running back inside your top 20 do you think can fall outside of your top 20, outside of the top 24?
I'm going to take the easy answer, and it's what we were discussing in the beginning of the show, the 1 year anomaly in James Cook. Let's see if he is able to do it. Sorry, Aiden. Let's see if he can do it again. I'm a big believer in Ray Davis. I'm a big fan of Ray Davis, and so
Me too.
I think he could take a step forward and eat into James Cook's workload. So that's probably the one out of everybody inside my 13 through 20 that I would say would fall out of the top.
I hope you're right, because I have Ray Davis in a couple of dynasty leagues, and he's just sitting in taxi, not doing anything. So I hope you're right.
Yeah, me too.
And who do you have falling out of your top 20 and below top 24?
Rhett, you pay close attention here because I'm going with Breece Hall.
Hey!
No, I've come around this little of him falling out. What if everything? Yes, Drew says he'll get volume, he'll get 300 touches. I expect that too. But what if
I don't know
everything?
That many, but
Well, someone said 300. Maybe Rhett said it. Whatever. Anyway, what if everything that Aaron Glenn is telling us that all three running backs are going to be involved, Braylon Allen, Isaiah Davis, and Breece Hall in any order, whatever. What if they are all involved, and then what if none of them are startable or low-end rosterable? I just am really concerned about the committee thing. And while Aaron Glenn wasn't the offensive coordinator in Detroit, he's seen that multiple running backs can be productive on one offense with Montgomery and Gibbs. So I just have a fear. I don't know. I've just had this weird fear of Breece Hall being like clumped into that committee back role. He deserves way more than that, but from a practical perspective, that's just what I'm concerned about.
yeah, it's fair.
Drew?
Jorge already talked about it. I talked about it a little bit earlier. It's James Cook for me too, man. He's the one I'm most nervous about. I already alluded to some of this earlier, but there's an account that I've started following on Twitter recently. It's at FF Datarama. It's a good account to follow. They put out some really good data, but he or she summarized my concerns about as good as anybody could have. So I'll just basically give you the tweet. Last year he had a 48% snap share, which was 37th best among running backs, and he had a 35.2% route share, which was 36th best. So the usage wasn't anything crazy. It wasn't even good. And yet he had a 7.7% touchdown rate, which was, as I mentioned earlier, a full percentage point higher than the next closest running back, and was insanely high compared to the previous year where he had the 2 rushing touchdowns on 237 attempts. And despite the fact he had such a high TD rate, he was still 25th among running backs whenever it came to attempts inside the 5-yard line, which is that's just wild. And the reality is not a lot's changed with this situation. Like, he's still in a really good offense. They didn't really add anybody of note. Like, I mean, they brought in Josh Palmer, so even with this usage similar to last year, he's probably still going to be productive. I just don't think you can expect the same touchdown luck, and it feels like a bad bet. So especially whenever you consider the fact that his receiving numbers even came down last year as well, and Ty Johnson's a threat to take away work in that area, and then Ray Davis is going to work in as well. He's a guy that I'm even, I've got him at running back 15 right now, and I've been considering moving him down a few spots lately. He's been a guy I've been struggling with, so he's definitely somebody I could see falling outside the top 24 if the touchdown luck really takes a break elsewhere.
Yeah, I like everything you're saying, Drew. And then for me, guys, I'm just going to go ahead and let's just look at it for what it is. We have 3, let's just call them running backs inside of this this top 24. Inside of the top 20,
Don't say that again.
between Alvin Kamara, Joe Mixon, and James Conner, we're going to call that our Unk territory. I'm not ready to commit to all three of them falling out of the top 24, but I am going to say this. They are all right there on that age cliff where one of them is almost a surefire bet to fall and be less than a top 24 this year. And for me, and maybe it's just because I'm just miserable with the current state of the franchise. I mean, I haven't seen Alvin Kamara be explosive in a couple of years. Yes, I get that he caught 68 passes last year. All I'm saying is this. If people aren't threatened by the New Orleans Saints vertical passing game this year, which is a distinct possibility that could happen,
A possibility.
what is to stop every defense in the NFL from keying on Alvin Kamara throughout the year?
Yeah,
Nothing.
that's fair. There really isn't anything.
So I get that he's been productive for a long time.
Yeah, he's still been good.
He's still
Still
been good,
valuable.
but this is a guy that if we want to look at the efficiency numbers, and I'm a big believer in efficiency numbers, yes, he catches a ton of passes. At the same time, this is a guy, I just railed on Najee Harris for having a 19% stuff rate last year. Alvin Kamara had a 20.2% stuff rate last year. Alvin Kamara averaged 3.6 yards per carry against a base front. Alvin Kamara was 51st against a live front at 5.1 yards per carry. He gets a lot of targets. He is also an expected fantasy points per game was expected to be running back 1 in fantasy at 21 points per game. He ended up averaging 19 fantasy points per game, which still placed him at running back 5, but it was 2 points below what was expected of him based off of his value. So,
Hey, Rhett, to your point, you have Kellen Moore there now. He likes to run 2 running backs. Kamara had a 59% snap share last year. I believe that's going to come down a little bit with Kellen Moore there. He's going to find a back. It's going to be either Devin Neal or Kendre Miller, but somebody's going to eat into those touches.
yeah. So
his usage is going to come down a little bit to your point. So, yeah, I like what you said there.
Right, I got a comment about that.
Sure.
Howard's talking about. You talk about you group these three, Mixon, Connor, and Kamara as aging. Aren't all three of those guys held up by volume still, though?
yeah, but I mean, all three of those guys also have young backs behind them that can possibly eat into that workload as well. I know Woody Marks is a gigantic unknown right now, but there's a possibility
I like him.
that he could be the running back 2 in that offense and get some of that passing volume because we know CJ Stroud, not especially mobile. So does Joe Mixon go from a 3-down back to a 2-down back? That's a possibility. James Conner got a lot of work last year and was healthy for the first time in forever. But this is still James Conner nearing age 30 with an explosive guy behind him in Trey Benson, who didn't get a lot of work last year, but was awfully efficient in that limited work as well. So there are just a couple of interesting things there that kind of help me say, hey, not all of these guys are going to fall off, but it's almost guaranteed that one of them will fall off.
I was just wondering.
So before we get out of here, guys, let's shout out our team over at Dynasty Decks. And as the season comes up and as you are prepping to win one of those coveted fantasy football championships,
What are those?
there is no better way to capture your victory than by getting your own Dynasty Decks championship plaque. Dynasty Decks or the DynastyDecks.com provides customizable championship plaques for any fantasy football format. All you got to do is use the promo code FRAMES and receive $5 off the purchase price. Very affordable compared to other market prices on other websites. All you got to do is go over to thedynastydecks.com today. So, guys, that's it. Any final thoughts before we get out of here?
Can't wait for next week. Get to talk about the big dogs, top
Big
12.
ones. Yeah.
So
This was interesting, though. This second tier, this was interesting about guys who could jump up, guys who could jump down. I enjoyed this a lot.
Absolutely.
Yeah. And so, like we said, we will be back next year talking the big dogs at the running back position, your RB1s, running back 12 to running back 1. So lock in with us
Final
next
countdown.
Wednesday. Don't forget to lock in at fantasyandframes.com for everything you need. Don't forget about these live streams. Jorge mentioned these Scott Fishbowl drafts we're going to have coming up soon. We have the draft show on a weekly basis. Dynasty 365, Shoot the Gap. Just a lot of things going on over at fantasyandframes.com and over on our podcast network. So before we get out of here, you can find me on X at RManuel Sports, Jorge at Jorge B. Edwards, Aiden at AWineGardner13, Drew at Drew3MR, and Kyle, go ahead and remind us one more time your Twitter handle, please.
I'm at KZ1180.
KZ1180. So for Kyle, Jorge, Aiden, and Drew, I'm Red Manuel. We are Fourth and Frames. Toodles.